peace is our profession. We hope to do that by the manifest capability to make war.
It's not to be able to blow somebody else up, but it's to keep them from trying to blow us up.
This is just a job, and this is defending our country, you know, and I don't even question it. I think it's right.
I think the misconception that everybody has that to launch a missile, you push a button.
It isn't a button.
No, it's just like cranking a car. You turn the key.
You jump in that airplane and you start the engines, and it makes you almost feel like a little kid. Hey, I can do this, and that guy next door can't do that.
There were two historic events in America last year. The first was the removal of the crook Richard Nixon. The second was something you will have almost certainly heard nothing about. For the first time since the beginning of the atomic age almost 30 years ago, the United States formally and quietly abandoned its policy of ultimate nuclear deterrent. In other words, the old game known in Washington as MAD, mutual assured destruction, is out. And a new, more insidious and more dangerous game is in. It is called counterforce. Counterforce means that the United States is now prepared not merely to deter its enemies by the threat of annihilation, but to actually wage a flexible, acceptable nuclear war. This means that for the first time, military thinkers in Washington are thinking the unthinkable, even the possible. What it also means is that the breakthrough in strategic arms limitations, as announced by President Ford and Mr. Kissinger on their recent return from Russia, is no more than a sham. Dr. Herbert York, one of the builders of the H-bomb and a former presidential advisor, says, "Counterforce is the most dangerous, foolish concept I've ever heard of." Democratic Senator Harold Hughes says, "Counterforce is no more than a fast gun in a new arms race. What the hell is going on?" He might well ask former President Nixon, who in his last desperate year finally agreed to give the generals in the Pentagon what other presidents had always refused them: a flexible strategy that would blur the distinction between conventional warfare and nuclear warfare and allow the president to use nuclear weapons in a so-called small war. This B-52 bomber crew, based in North Dakota, used to drop bombs on Vietnam, which was another Pentagon strategy. To them, a flexible nuclear war is just another war.
Invariably, even when you hit a target, by the very nature of aerial bombing, you might hit people as well who might not be involved. Do you ever think about that?
Yes, in any operation you're going to have some collateral damage.
Collateral damage? What is
Yes,
that?
this is outside of the target that you try to hit. I believe you were saying that things in the surrounding area. You'll probably get some collateral damage.
Collateral damage is the Pentagon jargon for the killing of innocent civilians. Just as in Vietnam, the language is sterilized and dehumanized, so that war, even nuclear war, is somehow made more tolerable, more acceptable. When these men talk about the dropping of a nuclear bomb, they call it the delivery of a package.
Do you have any idea, any concept of what a nuclear war would be? Have you any picture of what a nuclear war might turn out to be? Could I perhaps ask you, Sergeant?
Well, all I can think is just be almost complete devastation of the larger cities. It's pretty well covers it.
Can you imagine? Do you have a picture of a nuclear war?
Well, I believe everybody has some sort of a mental picture of what would happen. I've got to agree with Sergeant Olson. Yes, it would be total destruction of selected areas throughout any particular country. And I believe it'd be pretty awful. It would be, like I say, total destruction of selected areas.
But do I take it then you don't see it as necessarily an ultimate destruction? I mean,
No, I don't believe it would be an ultimate destruction. There would be other areas that weren't affected.
Not ultimate destruction, says a major who will drop the bomb, just selected areas of destruction. How times have changed. Already the new rationalized thinking for a limited nuclear war has come down to those who will carry it out. Back in the good old days, when nuclear war was too horrible to contemplate, let alone to plan for, manned bombers were being phased out because everybody agreed that missiles could blow us all up much more efficiently. But now that a limited war is acceptable, a new bomber, the B-1, has been built. Each one will cost $76 million.
Although the B-1 depicted...
A general reportedly told a Senate inquiry, with a nuclear bomber you can make a political point. You can hit a few Indians without taking out the whole tribe.
B-1 speed, for instance, is much greater, designed to fly at twice the speed of sound at high altitude and near supersonic speeds on the deck. Additionally, the B-1 will be able to carry almost double both the conventional and nuclear payload of the B-52. Will fly lower, further, and faster. Now, this is a fly-before-buy concept. And even if we get full funding for the B-1, which is no guarantee, and if all production schedules are met, it will still be the 1980 time frame before we have significant numbers of this aircraft in the SAC inventory. That completes the briefing, Mr. Pilger. I'd like to close, if I might, with these thoughts. We in SAC believe that it's through strength that a lasting peace will come. As President Ford has said, and I quote, "A strong defense is the surest way to peace. Strength makes détente attainable. Weakness invites war, as my generation has learned from 4 bitter experiences. Just as America's will for peace is second to none, so will our strength be second to none." Thank you.
What would you like?
Just your last name and your organization.
Okay. Organization here?
Yes, sir.
I was allowed inside the Strategic Air Command headquarters in Omaha, Nebraska. It would not be possible to make this kind of film in Russia or even in Britain because both countries are closed societies compared with the United States. But this surely is the contradiction of America. On the one hand, a democracy that exposes Watergate. On the other hand, a technocracy where economic pressures generated by the military do more, in my view, to stimulate the international arms race than any threat from Russia. Almost all the federal government's research budget goes to the military. The Pentagon employs almost half of all government officials. More than 22,000 major corporations are dependent on military contracts. Pentagon money feeds 1 American in 5. This is the Strategic Air Command underground command post. In the event of a nuclear war, this balcony will be filled with generals and other top-ranking officers. The Commander-in-Chief of the Strategic Air Command will sit in this chair. He will lift this yellow telephone, and he will speak to the National Command Headquarters in Washington, to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Almost certainly he will speak to the President himself and receive his orders. The orders will then be transmitted to the men downstairs manning the consoles, and America and possibly the world will be at war. Looking Glass takes off. Looking Glass is the code name for another nuclear command post that is always flying, always waiting.
Minneapolis Center, April 4-5.
A Looking Glass plane always has a general on board. If in the event of a flexible, limited nuclear war, everything below was wiped out, the general would open a sealed envelope, and by coded radio signals he would launch America's underground missiles. But by then it would be no more than a spasm from the nuclear ashes.
The most serious form of accidental nuclear war breakout would be a miscalculation. Certainly I would hope it's so infinitesimal within this command that it's almost beyond my ability to conceive of it, but I wouldn't rule it out as impossible.
Looking good.
Détente between America and Russia was meant to reduce our nuclear fears. In fact, precisely the opposite has happened. The arms limitation talks have actually accelerated the arms race, with each side building more and more nuclear toys as bargaining power. If this sounds crazy, you are right, it is. For example, the Vladivostok Agreement limits the number of missiles, like this Minuteman III, the cost of which, incidentally, would feed all of Bangladesh for 2 months. But the agreement does not limit the number of warheads carried by every missile. Incidentally, America will soon scrap its Polaris nuclear submarines, and if Britain wants to keep up, it will have to do the same. The new Trident submarine will cost us $1 billion each. All morality aside, can we really afford this new deal? In 1973, the United States Senate investigated America's nuclear defenses. The report of the investigation was heavily censored by the Pentagon on Mr. Nixon's orders, and when it was finally released to the American public, it was lost in the sea of Watergate. The contents of the report directly concern all of us in Britain. It reveals that more than 7,000 nuclear warheads are presently stored in Europe, and 2/3 of these are not in the custody of European governments, as everybody thought, but controlled directly from Washington. In other words, it doesn't really matter that we in Britain spend more on defense than any other European country, with the exception of Portugal. The reality is that our ultimate defense, or destruction, is at the sole political discretion of an American president, or whoever may have his finger on the trigger at the time.
It's going to be a long order this time, I believe.
Lieutenant Gene Moseley has his finger on the trigger. Today he bids farewell to his wife Barbara and leaves for a normal shift babysitting the big birds, as Gene affectionately calls his missiles. Gene Moseley is called a missileer and is trained to launch the Minuteman III missile from its silos spread across North Dakota.
Are the doors secure?
Yes, sir.
Today's briefing is unclassified. A classified briefing will follow. Transportation is as shown on the slide. Note your vehicles. Weather conditions presently in the missile complex. Sky conditions are overcast. Visibility at 7 miles.
Missileers are, it is fair to say, a very special and very strange group of young men. There is a kind of grey robot quality about them. Some are failed pilots, some are escaping from a desk job, others simply believe passionately in what they do.
One final reminder, the LCC is a no-loan zone and the SAC two-man policy applies. Merry Christmas.
Cloudy skies, light snow, 19 degrees in Fargo.
Gene Moseley and his fellow missileer, Captain Leroy Wayman, arrive at the Launch Control Center, where they will take charge of 10 Minuteman missiles buried under more than 7,000 square miles of farmland.
You're still doing wearing a pistol. I thought they were going to take those away from the FSCs.
No, sir, they decided let us keep the revolvers and decided to give us an M16 to boot.
The first thing they must do is load their revolvers, which they wear in case one of them goes mad. And if that happens, the other man must shoot him. This is official policy, although the Air Force and the missileers naturally don't like to talk about it. Each missileer has been put through what they call a human reliability program, which means that he is politically acceptable and mentally capable for the job. Mentally capable, that is, to launch a doomsday weapon.
Well, we'll see you all later.
Okay, sir.
See you tonight, sir.
Enjoy yourself, sir. All right, sir. Door is secure, sir.
Down go Gene and Leroy into their nuclear womb, the launch capsule 40 feet down. If war broke out, the only way up again would be through a sand-filled pipe. Their orders are to escape and to report for what are optimistically termed as other duties. If they can't escape, they have 5 weeks' rations, prepared appropriately by the American Society for the Blind.
I had my old lady working there. It's like, oh, no.
I don't know. That's your fault. You only went out and had all the kids.
I told her, I said, this is for fun, not for real.
Oh, well, mistakes will happen. That's
About 3 of them.
Stand clear!
The door to the launch capsule is 8 feet thick and blast-proof, they hope. The entrance to a modern pharaoh's tomb, 50 feet by 30 feet. The capsule itself is suspended within a huge concrete egg. It hangs from 4 gigantic shock absorbers, which have been designed to withstand a nuclear attack. How ironic it is that this airless, sterile dungeon is probably the safest place on Earth.
It looks like it might be going to snow here.
Barbara, do you worry that perhaps in the event of a nuclear war, Jean will be underground and that
Not at all.
possibly there'll be devastation all about you?
No, I don't worry about it because if it happens, and there's nothing I can do about it. So why worry about it? Just enjoy myself, live from day to day.
Do you ever think that he might have to perform the task for which he has been so expertly trained?
Yes, I do. I sure do.
What do you think?
I think that he's here to defend his country, and that's just fine with me, you know. I think that's what we're here for, and I think it's right.
Do you worry at all when he leaves that he might not come back?
No, not at all. It's like I say, I live from day to day, and just most times I just hope that nothing will happen, you know, that I will see him again.
Do you talk amongst each other about the possibility that it might one day happen? Jean, do you and Barbara talk together?
Once in a great while, especially if something's happening in the world, then you think about it more. If the Mideast is flaring up or something, you think about it a lot more. On a day-to-day basis, we just live our lives. And then if something around the world starts heating up, we might, you know, I might think a little bit more about it or mention, most of the time jokingly, you know, if I call you tonight, you better go to the basement or something like that, you know. Yeah. But most of the time, it's, we just don't even talk about it.
Yeah. Did you think about it during last October when the president pressed the button, so to speak, and caused a red alert?
Well,
were you on duty at that
I
time?
wasn't in the capsule at that time, which makes a lot of difference. If you're out there, you're really in on it. You hear over the speakers what's happening. We got called, all the missile men get called and told that they're on alert. Some of us had to go in. I work on the battle staff when I'm not out in the field, so I got called and got to go in.
Once a month, the missile squadron leader, Colonel Donald Crutchfield, pays a visit to his boys. There is no more dedicated missileer than Colonel Crutchfield.
Good, sir. How are you, G? How's it going?
Sir?
Having a good tour?
Good to see you again.
Yes, pretty smooth so far, sir.
No problems?
Nope.
All right. It's the way we like to keep it, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it sure is.
How do you feel, Colonel, when you come down here? Is it just like a routine visit, or do you ever feel that you've come down to what could be the front line of a future war? Do you feel like that when you come here?
Well, having been in the missile business for 15 years, I've spent a lot of time down here myself, so I don't connotate a particularly unusual feeling to it. I feel it's my job, and
yes,
these folks feel it's their job. And
what are people's reactions when they first step into this rather extraordinary capsule? What do they say to you?
maybe I'm a little bit biased. I think it's impressive, and I feel they think it's impressive. I think they feel that some of that taxpayers' money is going to a good cause.
Now, what happens if these two men are the last left?
Some of the procedures that are involved with that, I'm afraid I can't discuss with you. Yeah. There are other backup systems to support these men if the rest of the crews that are underground are lost. So there are quite a few steps we'd have to go through, quite a bit of degradation before we would ever get to the position that you asked.
Yes. But does that mean that the two-man crew in the end could have the capability of launching a missile?
I'm afraid I can't discuss that with you.
Other requirements? Anything else is clean and green?
When the order is given to go to war, from Omaha or directly from Washington, these two men will each take a key from this red box. Each man will insert the key in his own keyhole, and the two keys will be turned simultaneously.
The maintenance team is departing.
Although Colonel Crutchfield refused to answer my question, there is in fact a plan for a surviving two-man crew, or even one man, to launch a missile. That is why each man must wear a gun, and why each man must always watch the other.
Are you two good friends?
Yes.
So you're pretty close.
Yes.
Why do you each have a pistol, a gun?
The primary reason for it is in case you have visitors down in the capsule. And this is to protect your classified material that you have in your SAS container for the most part, but you have a lot of other classified material in the capsule, and that is the primary purpose of it, is for the protection of it.
Yes. Is it not also perhaps to use on each other if one goes insane at a certain point?
Interesting theory. I imagine so, but I don't believe you'd ever find a crew having to go that far. So a person doesn't go just insane, snap. The signs usually appear, and that's what we're always watching for. We're not authorized to use the weapon unless there's absolutely no other way. That is the last resort. Anytime a weapon is fired, especially with a civilian, we are just not authorized to use it unless that is the last ditch effort. And at that time, you better be sure if you use it.
You better be sure, I better be sure.
I better be sure, because you're going to be dead.
I see. I believe you. Leroy, do you enjoy your work?
I think missile duty is probably one of the most fulfilling, rewarding experiences. We do carry a major role in our defense of the United States as well as our allies, and I think the job satisfaction is very great.
Do you also get the same job satisfaction, Gene?
Yes, I enjoy it. I'm a non-rated, non-pilot type Air Force officer, and missile duty is the place where the action is for my type of officer, and I enjoy the work, and I'm good at my work. I'll go ahead and say it.
But in the event of a nuclear war, this missile site almost certainly would be one of those which would receive retaliatory attack. Has that ever crossed your mind?
Yes, it has crossed my mind. I know we are, or I think we are right in the heartland of it. With the things that we have around here, I'm sure we would be a prime target, and it has entered my mind.
Has it also crossed your mind that, as well as yourselves, your families might also be on the same target because they live very, very near this site?
I think they realize we are doing a very vital job toward the mission of the Air Force, and I think I know they are willing to sacrifice what would come as a result if we should ever have to go to war of this nature.
Transmode rotary switch to cable.
Is cable?
Select switch to 02.
02.
Okay, 02 is called up. Select test rotary switch to GST. Select test
From
rotary
1950 to 1970, there were 33 major accidents involving United States nuclear weapons. In 1968, 2 missiles with nuclear warheads were launched by accident. They were shot down, of course, but just in time. And that was before counterforce. Real power in America is often invisible. For example, it can rest with the few who comprehend and control America's incredible and lethal technology. The American military establishment has never been more powerful. This year, the Congress will give it the biggest arms budget in the history of the world, £37,000 million. Most of this will buy more and more nuclear weapons. Of course, the policy for using these weapons, the new policy of counterforce, of flexible, tolerable nuclear warfare, has been fully approved by a civilian president, President Nixon. Under Mr. Nixon's policy, which of course is Mr. Ford's policy, the calculated odds on a nuclear device being used in conflict before 1984 are now less than 3 to 1.